Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Good morning. Welcome to Financial Issues. Thanks for tuning in with us today. Financial Issues is a ministry that helps to educate people about financial issues from a biblical worldview. If you are a partner, our partner commentary should be updated today. Unfortunately, our website is going to be down Monday and Tuesday, so you won't get to take a peek at that commentary until later in the week when the new website goes live on Wednesday. So if you're not a partner, consider becoming one. For just $132 a year, you can partner with us. On today's show, we're going to get to the answers to the questions that you guys have been sending to us on the website. My good friend and colleague Jason McDowell is going to join me here in just a minute, and we're going to talk about the role of yield in a portfolio, and we're going to get encouragement from the scriptures from 1 Chronicles 16:11 a little bit later in the show. So let's welcome Jason. Jason, thanks for being here today. Jason is a financial advisor that works with me in private practice. He's been a longtime partner of the ministry, and he's a good friend and has a lot of good things to weigh in on here on the show. So thanks for being here again today, Jason.
Thank you.
All right. Well, our partners, we're going to be talking about how yield plays a part in overall portfolio return. And I think this is kind of a topic that can be listened to again and again. It's sort of a cornerstone of our strategy here. So our partners, especially the income partners, have been trained well to focus on the importance of yield in the moderate to conservative risk portfolios. One of the key tenets that we hope that partners will learn whenever they're growth in income or income investors is that when you're investing in securities that pay dividends or ones that pay interest, especially in the equity part of it, you're going to get paid to wait when stock prices fall, because, typically that does happen at some point in time. It's very rare that you buy a security and it does nothing but go up. So in the times when times get tough and stock prices are under pressure, getting paid a regular dividend is something that folks can hang on to. So let's talk a little bit about how yield plays a part in total return. What do you think?
Absolutely. I do want to address last week's commentary. If you're a partner, I hope you spent some time reading that. It was great. Very intuitive. I loved reading it each week. I'm a partner as well, and I love reading the commentary from Shanna and the research team. So let's talk about yield. A portfolio's yield is really going to be the percentage of investment income generated by a portfolio, but it's calculated by dividing the total investment income by the total value of the portfolio. So I'm going to give a simple example. If you have a portfolio of $1 million and it's invested in assets that generate about $30,000 of income, cash, right? The portfolio yield is going to be 3%. And a simple way to do that is you just take the income divided by the portfolio value, and then you can multiply that by 100 to simplify it if you don't like the decimal point, and it'll give you a round number, a whole number. So it'll be 3% there. So I know broker-dealers, retail broker-dealers provide that information, but sometimes I've seen them on the back end that they'll have the annual yield from a capital appreciation standpoint, but you got to go look at the dividends, see how much income was produced in there, and hopefully they can also generate that for you as well. It's good to keep your mind there. So when we measure performance like total return, we measure the actual rate of return of an investment or a pool of investments over a given evaluation period to include the interest, capital gains, dividends, and the distributions realized over that period, which is most often annualized each year. So 2 parts of return will be the combination of capital appreciation, or the change in market price of an asset, and income produced by the dividends and interest in the form of cash. And these 2 distinctions are important for measuring or peace of mind, like you said, during volatile markets. So if the capital appreciation looks like it's negative for the year, well, let's go look at the yield as well. You're going to see a positive number for that 1 year. So
Yeah, that's good. And and another point too is that's really hard to track is how much money you save by being tax efficient. So if you're doing QCDs, if you have a good tax strategy, that's a part that's not even measurable on a portfolio. And we really tried to do this with the new enhancements on our website with our new tracker tool. We wanted to include a portfolio yield, but we just couldn't make it was a far too complicated technical thing to happen because the data that you input on your tracker doesn't pull from a real live feed. So it made it too difficult for it to figure out how much yield you were getting off of your CDs and different things like that. And because it was inaccurate, we just decided not to include it. But it's a really good metric to look at, And our strategy, we have two different asset allocation models that you can pick from. You can be your own portfolio manager and choose the investment model, which is mostly just individual securities, which is really relevant to the conversation that we're having right now. Or you can choose the mutual fund ETF model, where yield is not going to be as big of a part of your overall return. So, Jason, let's talk about how those two things, how yield plays out in those two different scenarios.
So the investment model, we're going to look at stocks. Straightforward price appreciation is going to be growth from the cost basis. That's simple. I think that's widely accepted and understood. But we're going to look at also in the FISM strategy, there are some holdings that can be classified as growth and income stocks. And why is that? Well, some companies have dividends and create a yield with the potential of growth in the price of the stock as well. So together, there's a total return for that one individual company. So that's always something to look at if you're bothered by what the market looks like and you have a favorite holding or something like that, and you're seeing that it's down. Well, does it produce a dividend as well? You want to take that into account when the year pretty much ends. So this is a perfect example of total return with that. So a straightforward example is an investor buys shares bought of company A and the share price increases 20%. Well, that's 20% in return there, but we learned that the company also has a dividend and pays out annually a yield of 3%. So the combined dividend adjusted return would be 23. So that would be the technical term.
Yeah. That brings up a good point. It reminds me of, working with clients. A lot of times when you're reviewing a portfolio, people tend to focus on the pieces rather than the portfolio in general. In fact, I was talking to one of the analysts, and he used to manage a good bit of money, and he was having a review with one of his big clients, and he said he was up, I'm not even going to say how much because it was a huge percentage for the year, but he said he was down 15% in one position, and that's the only question that his client had. And I think that's the case, as we can really focus in on one piece of the portfolio. But I like this conversation that we're having right now because it reminds us to look at how the whole entire portfolio is working all together. Go on.
All right. And the last one in that is the preferred stock. And I agree. And that's a funny story because we get that a lot in private practice. But so the preferred stocks are characteristics of both bonds and common stock. I know, Shannon, you've talked a lot about preferreds. There's always been a lot of questions from partners about preferred. So this is really good. It's a equity, but without the focus of capital appreciation. Its focus basically is the yield from the dividend. So that would be the purpose of it being included in a strategy, which of course is diversified and balanced. So there's different types of preferred stocks that will keep it simple, but the purpose is most often just income, cash creation in the portfolio. That's where it's going to hold or fixed income in that sense. Yeah. Then there's also the fund models where mutual funds are a little bit more complex. The numbers most always reflect the reinvestment of dividends and capital gains distributions, which are required as a pass-through from the prior 12 months. So this is going to be kind of a combo. Effects of sales charges may or may not be included in those. A prospectus is going to talk about the historical returns, never the forward, and also include the fees in that as well. So there's more of a complex looking at the dividends or the capital appreciation of a mutual fund in those cases. So looking specifically at the capital growth, the net asset value, or the NAV, which is essentially the price per share of a fund calculated by dividing the total value of the fund's assets minus the liabilities. And that essentially happens at market close or after market close each day. So the assets have been, if it's actively managed, and then it's assessed each day after the market close. So there's a few ways that mutual funds can calculate their return. The absolute return, we're just calculating the total gain or loss of your investment as a percentage of the initial investment. So if your initial investment is about 10,000, are you looking at it at the end of the year as, is it 11,000 or is it 9,000 from that point, from the initial investment? And there's annualized return, which is just calculating the average annual return over a period, taking into account the compounding effect of it. The last one, really kind of rings for like the younger crowd if they're in the accumulation years. You think of your 401k as well. It's the compound annual growth rate. So it's similar to the annualized return, but it calculates the average annual growth rate over a period, assuming returns are reinvested. So that's something special with mutual funds, is reelecting that any capital gains or dividends that are produced out of the mutual fund, as you being a shareholder of that mutual fund, can be reinvested. So it's a compounding growth factor. So I call it the accumulation machine for those that are probably in the accumulation years. And that's why it's also included as part of a balanced portfolio in pretty much all of our asset allocation models.
Great assessment there. You know what? I'm going to hold you over because we have a question from some partners about preferred stocks. So we're going to take a break here, folks, but then we're going to bring Jason back. We're going to address this question, and then we're going to get to a lot of the other questions that you guys have been sending in. Stay tuned. We're going to take a break and be back with more financial issues right after this.
How is Timothy Plan continuing to lead the fight as you guys now enter your fourth decade of leading this fight of biblically responsible investing?
We've been too silent for too long, and we can no longer be silent. You stand up, like Ronald Reagan said, we're only one generation away from losing all of our liberty. Yeah. It has to be fought for. I wish it didn't. And you can fight for it. You don't need guns and ammunition and that. You can fight for it, especially with your dollars, because it's always about the money. And when the money starts impacting people, they start paying attention. When we launched this, they said it couldn't be done, but here we are 30 years later. They said you couldn't get competitive returns, but here we are.
What a tremendous testament of God's grace.
Go to financialissues.org/Timothy Plans to learn more about Timothy Plan.
Kids need the hope of Jesus. There's so much loneliness, brokenness, isolation, and bullying. Now, you and I, we have the opportunity to do exactly what Jesus said, to go and make disciples, right where they are, right inside their public school. The Lord has been building the impact of Crossroads Kids Club, and we ask for your help to pursue a vision of greater national expansion.
To join us, visit reachourschools.com. That's reachourschools.com.
If a woman sees her baby on ultrasound, it doubles the likelihood that she'll choose life. On top of that, we share the gospel of Jesus Christ with her. This is why you should support preborn.
Then they sat me down. If you were to die today, do you think you would go to heaven? And I was like, no. Keeping the child was my first stepping stone, and ever since then, God has cleaned me up from the inside out.
Help support women in need. Go to preborn.com/FISM.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shanna are hers alone and are for informational purposes only, and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it, and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. Thanks for sticking around with us. I've got my friend Jason back. We're going to finish up our conversation here because we've been talking about how yield plays a part in construction portfolio overall return. We hope that you've learned a little today and maybe had some questions answered. Speaking of questions answered, we did get a question that really kind of initiated this conversation for us. It came from... who did it come from? It came from Lynn from PA. So Lynn had a question, and she says she has a broker, a traditional traditional and Roth accounts. She's 82 years old, and she was asking about preferreds and wanted to know if they should be purchased in the broker, and I think she means like just the taxable account or the Roth account, and why the choice. She wanted to know how they're taxed in a broker account, and she says she has high cash in a broker account, and the taxes are killing her since she is taxed. The interest on the preferreds is taxed, and that she's having to pay stepped up Medicare increased premiums, I guess she's talking about there, because of some poor advice from a previous, I guess, professional that she worked with. So, Jason, you want to weigh in on that? There's a lot of questions there.
Yeah, we'll go through each one. Let's start with Aunt Irma. So with the preferred specifically, if they are housed in a taxable brokerage account there, those dividends or cash will be treated as taxable income. So if you're on Medicare, modified adjusted gross income is going to be considered here. And if your Medicare premiums are going up, it's because 2 years prior, there was a increase to your modified gross income to go into that next IRMA bracket. So that's something you want to talk with your tax professional about. Specifically with preferreds, where do we like to house those the best? We believe that if you can house them in the traditional IRAs in that place, that would probably be the best place to put them. Not often do we think the Roths should be used for preferreds, but Shanna, you and I were just talking about how we have, clients that have, I have a young couple that have they will have a lot of money in Roths. So at some point, sometimes all you have is Roth as a choice. But we traditionally would like it to be in the IRAs from that point. Now, if the preferreds in your taxable brokerage account are becoming an issue with that cash, preferreds don't have a lot of capital appreciation as far as their goal. So it's possible if they're at a loss and you're capital gain sensitive, then you can look at removing those there. And if you can put them in a traditional IRA, that would be a good place to just repurchase them there, just because the price fluctuation isn't going to matter too much. You're just moving something into the fixed income of your asset allocation model into a better tax located account. So we would be looking at that there.
Yeah, good. I'll just add to that, and I'll say, it sounds like from her question that Aunt Irma probably isn't going to stay long in her situation. So there's what I'm kind of reading between the lines is that the increased Medicare premiums that she's paying is from income that she got 2 years ago. So maybe that coincides with whatever bad advice she's saying that she's gotten. So again, I reiterate that an IRA is my first choice, not because I'm trying to avoid the tax on the interest that's coming in, but in an IRA, at some point in time, as you get older, you're going to have required minimum distributions, or you're going to be taking income on a regular basis from the IRA. And having the preferreds there helps to generate that cash for those future distributions. And because the IRA is going to be taxed at some point in the future, you want to have the things that are going to grow the least in your portfolio. So if I had a choice between, let's say, a preferred stock that's paying me 7% or a growth in income stock that maybe is only paying 3% but has projected growth forward of 8% a year, I'm going to choose the lower growing preferred, or the no growth preferred with just the interest in the IRA. So I would almost never want to see preferreds in a Roth account, because you want to reserve, the Roth has the most tax advantaged treatment. So you want to have the most aggressive pieces of your portfolio in the Roth account. Now the exception would be, like you said, I can think of a client off the top of my head that's got 90% of their liquid assets in a Roth just because they planned that way, and it's actually working out pretty good for them. So, by nature of it, they're going to have probably some preferreds in their Roth. So, Lynn's case, I don't know, may be an exception, but here's the other side of the coin that you have to think about. So, Lynn, if you could be sure that owning preferreds in a tax-advantaged account like your IRA or your Roth would actually result in putting you in a lower tax bracket and prevent you from having to pay that extra IRMA, Medicare premium, then I would consider doing it. But I would submit to you that now you have the question of what are you going to invest in if you decide to sell out of the preferreds in your taxable account to avoid having the taxable interest. What are you going to do with the proceeds? Even if you leave it in cash right now, you're still going to have almost as much income, I would suggest, as you would if you had stayed in the preferred, because your money market's probably paying somewhere between 3 and 4%. So, if the preferred was paying 7, sure, you won't have as much income, but is that reduction in income actually going to be enough to put you under the IRMA limit or under, down into the next lower tax bracket? So, and then it's even an easier decision to keep it there potentially, because if the alternative is to put it into a dividend paying stock, now you're still going to have some dividend income that's going to count towards your overall income, and you're going to have a situation for potential capital gains. So I don't suspect, I could be wrong, but I don't suspect that making that shift will really produce the reduction of income that's needed. And at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, is having taxable income really a bad thing? I think maybe not. Well, Jason, thanks for coming on. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add before we move on?
Just the perspective. Think about that yield. If at any negative year, like 2022 was a negative year, just remember that there's a positive in there. And to take the asset allocation models, which coming out this week here, and look at the high level view of where everything fits to make the entire machine work. So I'm excited for it, and I'm excited for everybody's excitement. I've been waiting for it. So.
Good stuff. Well, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate your involvement, your input, and your support of the ministry. All right, Sam, why don't we go on to some of the Ask Shanna questions?
See if we can crank some out, right? So we'll start with Pete from Seattle. He says, "Hey, Shanna, a few years ago, after I retired from the Marines, we failed to stop contributing to our Roth IRAs and had to pay the 6% penalty on excess contributions as we had no earned income. It recently occurred to me that a one-time 6% fee to invest long-term without being taxed on the growth is actually not such a bad deal. Typically, growth in the first year alone exceeds 6%, more than making up for the penalty. Your thoughts?"
I like the way you think. That would be great if it worked. Unfortunately, Uncle Sam was sort of a step ahead of you.
So great if true.
Great if true, but this is where we find out that Uncle Sam was a little bit more forward-thinking. So there is a 6% penalty. That 6% penalty is not just in the first year. It's assessed each year that the excess contributions remain in the account. So a Roth conversion might be something that would work a little bit better for you. You don't have to have earned income to do a Roth conversion. So if you're okay with paying some money to be able to have the tax advantage status of a Roth, then a Roth can, if you have an IRA, I'm assuming, so an IRA that could be converted over, and you can do that. You can control the amounts that you convert every year so that you can try to manage the tax consequences of that. Wish we had time for some more questions, but I think at this point we're coming to the end of the this part of the show, and we need to transition into the stewardship verse of the day, because we never want to neglect the scriptures. There's great wisdom there. So our stewardship verse today comes from 1 Chronicles 16:11. "Seek the Lord in his strength, seek his face forevermore." So we spend a lot of our time and energy seeking something. That's just how we're built. We're always seeking and searching for something. And this scripture is a great reminder that the most important thing to seek is not money or fame, riches, material things, position, power. All of those things can be blessings, but they're not the things that we are to seek. Because all of those things, if they do come from the hand of God. Now, a good steward knows that the most important thing to seek is the face of God. So the difference there, the face of God represents knowing God intimately. Spending time face to face with God is worth more than anything that the hand of God could deliver us. So let's all be good stewards and let's harness our time and our energy to seek what is of great value, the face of God. All right, folks, I'll take this last little bit of time to remind you of a few things. Our website is being revealed to the partners on this Wednesday, March the 24th. So today, Monday, and tomorrow, Tuesday, our website will be down so that we can make that transition over. Hopefully, you've memorized your password. You've got all of your ducks in a row so that you can get right in on Wednesday. We have some FAQs on the website about, what to do if you experience an issue, how to resolve that, and so on and so forth. You're really going to love the new features. The portfolio tracker is new and improved. It's going to be searchable. It's going to have all of the components that you consider when you're building and rebalancing your portfolio consolidated on one spot for you. It's going to be easier to find different stocks that you're looking for. Maybe you have a holding and you want to know what sector it's in because you're trying to add it to the portfolio tracker. You're now going to be able to search by either the symbol of the holding that you have. You'll also have data in there about subsector or industry, whether it's a small, mid, or large cap company, and so many other new features. We're really excited for you guys to see it. If you're listening on a station that only carries the 30-minute version of the show, we wish you a farewell. If you want to catch the full show, though, go to financialissues.org/live. Not today, but that's usually where you can find the full show. Or catch us on podcast. For everybody else, stick around. We've got more financial issues right after this.
Where's Mima? We found out Shepard's diagnosis when I was about 17 weeks pregnant. We learned that he was going to need a series of surgeries after he was born in order to give him what they considered a normal life. And we weren't sure how this worked.
Yeah, very emotional, very, very broken. And as my wife just said, not sure how this worked. And called Samaritan, and they said, you just go have that baby. You leave the rest to us.
And just to hear the confidence on the other end of the phone of this is not something that you need to be concerned about at all. You focus on the health of your family, the health of your baby, and we will walk with you every step of the way.
I just love the first book of Exodus. The king says the Jews are too many. Get rid of them. I command you to kill the firstborn. But the midwives to the Hebrews heard the order, and what did they do? They defied it. And God dealt favorably with the midwives and gave them families. He blessed them for loving life. He blessed them for saving babies. We have re-entered the death cult in this country. You think about how much we elevate death, whether it be the chopping off of parts and we call it transgender care, whether it be shouting our abortion, and you see it so beautifully in John 10:10. It is the divide of the entire scriptures. Now, most people would say John 3:16, but think about it. The enemy has come to lie, steal, cheat, and destroy. I have come to give life and life more abundantly. That's the whole ball game, everybody. It is everything. And we have to have the joy of Jesus Christ to enjoy life and to protect it. It's a gift from above. And Preborn is leading the charge.
My wife and I, we moved into this neighborhood. We had some experience with Crossroads Kids Club. We had served at another club. We kind of thought to ourselves, like, it would be really, really cool for us to actually bring in a club that was able to share the love of Jesus with kids directly into the school. And so we started our Crossroads at Hilltop.
Crossroads is amazing. You can learn all kinds of things about God. That He loves all of us. He died on the cross to pay for our sins. That He will help me in every way.
There is just such tremendous opportunity to reach kids in some of these areas that just aren't being reached.
Sometimes I pray every night. When I feel alone sometimes, God is right there sitting next to me. I can rely on Him no matter what happens.
To learn more about Crossroads Kids Club and how you can get involved, visit reachOurschools.com.
back to Financial Issues, folks. I'm excited to bring you a little teachable moment here today. I got Sam Case over in the control room with me. Sam, good to have you on, buddy. We're having some fun today, of course, as always.
Yeah. Got the levers leading me today.
That's
playing
right.
the music.
That's right, man. It's good. It's good stuff. So, folks, today's teachable moment is really on the emergency fund. Kind of that first important building block foundation for you to be a good investor, a good godly investor. Also, we believe is that you have that emergency fund all set up here. So, we're going to talk about that here. But before we do, let's hear what Shanna has to say about it. Just some good advice from her on building an emergency fund, the process of it, and some of the things that we need to consider as we do so. So here's our conversation that we had recently, Shanna and I did, on building an emergency fund. Speaking of hardships that many of us do go through, a lot of us go through financial hardships. And so that leads to our topic of the day today. What if we find ourselves in a situation where we have to spend our emergency fund? Now, I get, for some of us, it may look different than others. But for many of us, if we're trying to get that emergency fund built up and then we face a life situation, a crisis where we have to spend it, that could be really tough. Sometimes things happen that are outside of our control. We've done a good job managing our money wisely, but things still happen. Just to begin, Shannon, I saw a recent article I'd love to get your take on from Forbes saying many Americans are ill-prepared for financial disaster. So this is not a rare thing. This is pretty common here. 75% of consumers say they're very or slightly stressed about being prepared for financial emergency. 38% said that they have between $1,000 and $2,000 saved for emergencies, while an additional 18% say they have no emergency savings at all. 37% say they're somewhat or very uncomfortable with their current level of emergency savings, and then 34% of survey participants said they couldn't cover an emergency expense of $1,000 without taking on debt. That's a lot of people. So just to start off, Shanna, what is a good emergency fund amount, and why is it vital that we have this adequate emergency fund?
Well, it's important to have this emergency fund to, number one, avoid going into debt if you can, if you have an emergency like that. And, number two, to avoid having to cash out of any of your investments. So that's why this is the first step in establishing this emergency fund before you start to try investing, because, returns are up sometimes, they're down sometimes. And if you have an emergency, you never know if it's going to be when the value is up or down. And you really don't want to have to cash out or be forced to sell when your investments are down. So it really depends. The amount of money you need in emergency savings really depends on where you are in your investor life cycle and, what your needs might be. So, are you married? Do you have a family? Are you single? You might have to have, less. Do you own a house? Do you rent? What are your fixed expenses? So, this is kind of a wide range here, but anywhere from 3 months to 12 months worth of your monthly expenses is good to set aside in an emergency fund. So it also depends on what kind of job you have. Do you have a job? Do you work in healthcare where there's lots of jobs available? Or do you do something that are you a rocket scientist? Where there's fewer maybe job openings, or, job opportunities that would be very comparable to the one that you're leaving. So depends on, how long you think it would take to replace that income. And then you have to think about, why do you need an emergency fund? What might you spend those things on? Well, what if you have a car accident? What if you to save money on your premium, what if you chose $1,000 deductible and, the accident was your fault. Now you're looking to spend $1,000 to get your vehicle fixed. What if it's an appliance goes out at home? Can't live very long without a refrigerator, or can't live more than a day or so in my house without a washer or dryer. So you have to, think about those kind of things. What if you have a home repair? What if you live on the coast like I do and a hurricane comes and you have to put a new roof on your house or things like that? So you want to think about all of those things that might come up and use that information as you're trying to decide how much is a adequate emergency savings account for you.
Yeah, that's good, Shanna. So let's say, just for example, one or multiple of these things happens, God forbid, but it can happen, and we're forced to deplete that emergency savings to remedy or at least just begin the process of fixing this issue. How do we come back from this? So we've had to deplete it. What do we do next?
Well, I would say it would be similar to the way that you built up your savings account in the first place. So, if you're saving, if you're investing already, maybe you want to make some adjustments to that. I would caution you to not stop in your investing altogether, but, if you had been putting $100 a month away and you'd been investing $90 and putting $10 in your savings account, maybe you flip-flop that. Maybe you redirect more of the money into savings until that emergency fund is replenished. But don't stop the discipline of investing altogether. Stay in that rhythm and then flip-flop them back when you get the opportunity.
Yeah, good. And what other things should we consider if we find ourselves in a situation like this?
Well, we're called to be grateful and to thank God no matter what situation we find ourselves in. So we can thank God, first of all, that He gave us the wisdom to save those funds and that we had the funds to meet the need in that emergency. We can do our best not to go into debt, but if we have to go into debt, we want to try to pay it off as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's good. And then speaking of debt, Shanna, last question here. What if we do have the choice before us of using debt in a situation like this? Should we do so, or are there better ways to try to get the money, pick up a second income, for example, seek help from family? What would you suggest?
Yeah, I would say debt is the option of last resort. Sometimes it's unavoidable.
Sure.
But, it really depends on your relationship with your friends and family. I personally would want to avoid doing that. I would hate it if circumstances hindered my ability to pay back my friend or family, and it really put them in a worse position. So, taking on another job or looking for opportunities to sell things that you don't really need. I see people selling stuff on Facebook all the time. So, I, for one, can say that there's a lot of stuff hanging around my house that I don't need at all. And lots of times you can, maybe recoup some of that money by doing some of those things.
Yeah. It even brings to mind, Shannon, we talk about living within your means. If you're in a situation like this and you still pay for a Netflix account, might be time to cut that out and get that extra, just a little bit of extra helps. It
also help your spiritual life too.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And Shannon, it reminded me too, you've mentioned the different buckets of money. Just a good reminder that this emergency saving is different from that investing. But I love what you said, how even if we're in a situation like this, we can help it to not stop the discipline of still investing. Good reminders there, of course, here, folks. One more clip from Shanna. This was actually with a caller on, so you've got that emergency fund, but then the question becomes, where do you keep it? What's the best kind of place to deploy it so that it can be used to its best potential for you? So here's Shanna with that caller, some great insight as well.
I'm 37 and I'm in the aggressive model, and so we're closing in on having about $10,000 saved in our emergency fund. And so we were just wondering if we should keep that cash at home, in the bank, or like in a money market.
Yeah, that's a great question. So you may want to consider keeping about half of it at home, since you've got 6 months, so maybe 3 months worth. Keep at home as long as you have a safe place to keep it. So the risk of keeping it at home, of course, is that somebody could steal it. If your house caught on fire, it could burn up. So
if you got little kids, they might eat it.
That's true.
That's right.
I hope not. That's really dirty. Immune builder, I guess. Mm-hmm. So you should keep some at home just in case of emergencies. You're in Illinois. I live on the coast, so we're always in hurricane season. Looking at needing to, if electricity goes out, the ATMs are out. There's all kind of national emergencies or natural disasters that could happen, I guess, anywhere. So it's good to have some at home that you could get to in case of a real emergency like that. And then I would certainly keep some probably at the same financial institution that you keep your operating fund or like your checking account. Most people have an account where they receive money in, that they do all their bill paying from that.
Yeah.
So if you have it attached to that, it's easy just to make a phone call or maybe get online and transfer some money over if you, if you do have an emergency.
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much, and we just appreciate all that you guys do, and just God bless your team.
Listen, folks, you have to know if you're going to keep your money at home, sometimes the kids will get to it and they'll eat it. That's another one, fire, theft, and curious children. So, but love to have that there. So yeah, good, really good insight from Shanna, of course, on where to keep that emergency fund. Coming up on the next part of our show here after this break, we'll hear from Shanna one more time, and then we'll talk a little bit more just about this idea of the emergency fund, the purpose of it. Once again, the difference between the emergency fund and investments, and sometimes getting over that hurdle also of feeling the need to spend, or rather feeling guilty when you had to spend it. I know that's a tough one for me. So we'll talk more about that all on the other side of this break coming up here. Make sure to say hello if you're listening to the show on social media. You're on the live chat. You can always chime in and say hello to us. We'd love to see you there. More financial issues coming up right after this. Don't go anywhere.
It's up to us to stand up and say, enough is enough. All of this unbiblical stuff that's going on, whether it's abortion or transsexual or LGBTQ, widespread pornography, human trafficking. Bottom line, it's still up to us. If we stop investing in these corporations that are trying to destroy us, sooner or later they're going to wake up.
To learn more about biblically responsible mutual funds and ETFs, go to timothyplan.com.
Hi, this is Sheena Bird, the host of Financial Issues. Financial Issues family is so blessed to have saved tens of thousands of babies, all thanks to the generous support of you, our listeners and viewers. For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds. Please go to preborn.org, that's preborn.org, or financialissues.org and click on the Preborn logo. Save a baby, save a life.
What separates Crossroads Kids Club from other ministries to reach school-age children? What sets you guys apart?
First of all is our connection with local churches. We mobilize, equip, train, support local church partners. We're right inside the schools. There's a number of ministries that try to serve public school children outside of the school, but we're able to be right there on the campus. Another key thing is just our values. Our highest value is actually relationships. And so we're not a ministry that's driven by a lot of fancy technology or flashy stuff, but rather getting adults who love Jesus and who love kids to sit on the floor with a group of kids, to listen to them, to love them. So I would say the relational emphasis and the simplicity of the model is actually something that makes Crossroads special as well.
Help reach kids with the hope of the gospel. Visit reachOurschools.com.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Folks, the theme of this teachable moment, of course, is that emergency fund. It has a lot to do with your savings. And of course, if you're looking for ways that you can cut costs, especially with your health care, you need to check out Samaritan Ministries. The prices that they offer for the member monthly pay-ins for you to be a part of Samaritan Ministries are really just way better than what you'll get with most of the big healthcare companies. So you got to check them out, Samaritan Ministries. There's something really special about doing health sharing with Christians, and Samaritan Ministries offers this. So check them out at SamaritanMinistries.org. You can visit that website now. You can find it on our website. If you go to financialissues.org, click the Samaritan Ministries banner, it will take you right there. So make sure that you do that, folks. One more Shanna clip I'd love to share here, talking about the purpose of the emergency fund. This is good wisdom from Shanna. Here she is. George from New York. George is asking, since discount brokerage core money market positions offer higher yields than most bank savings accounts, is it okay to use them like a savings account even though they aren't FDIC insured? Is the risk of them failing so low that it doesn't really matter, Shanna? What do you think?
Well, I'm always a big fan of diversification. So, I think that the purpose or the main goal for emergency funds is liquidity and safety. So I would be in favor of just using your FDIC insured accounts for that part of your money. And, it shouldn't be a huge portion of your portfolio. So, again, the goal should be for safety and liquidity rather than return on that piece of it. Return should be a huge goal for your investment funds. So, I would hedge that risk by using the FDIC insured investments.
So good stuff there, as always, folks. Okay, Sam, let's try to put a bow on this and wrap this thing up here a little bit. So the emergency fund, it's interesting to think about this, folks, because as we said at the top, this is part of really a good investment strategy, but it's not investment. It's really not. Those are two separate buckets of money there as you think about it. Your investable dollars, that's money that I think right off the bat you have to say, I am okay with losing this money. I'm not saying that you will lose it, but you have to be okay with losing that money. This is not money that you are going to need, next month to get your brakes fixed on your car, for example. That's different from your savings money. The savings money should not be touched for investing. We really do believe that, especially that emergency fund. So if you're getting that 3 to 6 month fund set up, and by the way, it's 3 to 6 months we've typically found, and Shanna has mentioned it could be anywhere from 3 months to 1 year of your current salary, basically. So it's 3 months to 1 year of your current salary. You get that built up, and that's a good kind of, like we've said before, kind of a nest egg protection for you. If, for example, like I had recently, if your pipes go because they're 70 years old and they were original to the house when it was built, you need to get them replaced. Thankfully, we had the money in our emergency fund to be able to pay for it, or we didn't need to do a payment plan. We didn't need to go into debt or anything like that. And I said, praise God for that emergency fund. It was awesome. It wasn't awesome having to pay for it, but it was nice knowing that we had that freedom there to be able to do that. Had I, though, taken that money and chosen to invest it, depending on when I got into the market, depending on how risky I wanted to be, I may not have had the money to be able to pay for it because the market might have been down at that point. You see the difference there? You've got to keep those monies separate. The investments are separate from the emergency savings.
Plus, it's just an entirely different discipline, right?
It is.
Once you put it in the market, you never want to have to pull it out.
Absolutely.
As opposed to your savings, your emergency fund, you're doing that in a lot of ways with it in mind that you're going to have to pull out from it at some point.
Absolutely. Sam, you're exactly right. That's a huge part of it, is that you're putting this money away with the intention of spending it. Hopefully you don't have to. I mean, it'd be delightful if we just kept on building and building and adding to the savings fund. The reality is, common sense tells us that life happens and eventually you're going to have to spend some of your savings fund, or maybe a big portion of it. You might be in a great house, you might have a great car, you might be in great health, but things happen. You might get in a car accident. Your pipes might freeze. Your heating system might stop working in the middle of winter, something like that. You might need to get a new roof on your house. Someone may drive by and kick up a rock and it may fly through your window and crack your window and you got to get a window replaced. All that kind of stuff can happen. I'm not trying to strike fear into you at all, but that's why we have the emergency fund. That's part of being a wise investor. That's part of being disciplined also, is knowing that we have to prepare for any kind of scenario. Sam, I think one difference, though, between the way that we think about it, maybe the way that the world might think about it, is we put that money away and we hold it, even that, with open hands too, because there is a danger with the savings of starting to tread into the territory of hoarding. You know, if you are thinking, oh, I need to prepare for anything and everything, I need to make sure that I have more than enough for everyone around me, all that stuff. I am not dissing on being prepared. In fact, Megan and I are actually starting to build up some of that emergency, like red alert level stuff. If a nuclear attack happens, we're starting to build up our arsenal of sorts, if you will, to be able to survive for a certain period of time. But we cannot be overly zealous about that to a point of where we're hoarding and then we're making our stuff and our comfort a god. Would you agree with that, Sam?
Oh, yeah. You don't want to be the guy in Jesus' parable who's just building up his barns and his storerooms, so he thinks this is going to be my salvation. Ultimately, our security comes from Christ. It doesn't come from our finances. But I do agree with you, Seth. You still feel the sting when you have a car payment or something like that comes down. You have to pull $1,000 out of your savings. That still does sting, and it does make you check yourself a little bit. It's like, why does that sting? Yes, it's a lot of money, but is it also because I'm putting too much faith and security in my savings fund?
That's exactly right. And I do think that's something that we all have to deal with. And look, you may be the type of investor, you might be older, you might kind of be past that point where you've maybe got your house paid off, maybe you're not in any debt, and you're not even in the situation where you might have to worry about that. But these principles still apply, because Sam, you're exactly right. At the core of that, at the core of the, the hoarder mentality, or the putting so much emphasis into the savings fund and making sure that it's all ready, the potential downside of it is making money into our God. And we certainly don't want to do that.
I remember a couple of years ago, I bought a used car, and it was a great deal, and it was a couple $1,000. But when I was pulling out of that savings account in order to buy it, I was thinking like, oh man, I hate that I have to spend this money. Instead of thinking like, praise God that I have the money, that my car broke down and now I can get a new one. So it's kind of an attitude adjustment. You should be thankful for the amount of money that you have saved away, and be thankful to God that you have been able to do that, and that you've developed that discipline.
That's exactly right. I had the same exact thought with the pipes recently too. It was like, gosh, do I really have to spend this money? I worked so hard to build this savings up. I hit the goal that we had, and then a huge chunk of it gets taken away because of something that I didn't cause. It wasn't anybody's fault. We live in somewhat of an older house, and the pipes were older. Thank God they lasted as long as they did, I suppose. But also, like you said, Sam, thank God that we had the money. That's the right mindset to have, and that's really what I'm trying to harp on here, folks, is if you're feeling that guilt when you spend your emergency money, what do I do when I have to spend it? Free yourself from that guilt. The money is there to be spent. It is there for emergencies. It's there for when your pipes burst. It's there for when you need a new car. It's when your transmission blows, or when a tree falls down in your yard and you don't have the skill or ability to remove it, so you got to pay someone to do it. It's there for that kind of stuff. That's why it's there. So breathe a sigh of relief. Free yourself of that guilt of, I spent all this money, and now I spent all this time building this up, and now I got to spend the money, and it can go away like that so quickly. Don't be discouraged. Remember, that's what it's there for. That was its purpose. Its purpose. It was never meant to just provide you some level of comfort or security. That's supposed to come from God.
It's not supposed to be like a high score in a video game. These are my points. These are my life points.
That's right.
And now I have them, and I'm winning because my score is higher.
Absolutely. And folks, we're telling you all this stuff. I speak from experience on this. There were times where I had my emergency savings fund built up before the pipes burst, where I was kind of feeling pretty good about myself. I was feeling like, all right, I got this. And I think maybe there was a little bit in my spirit of perhaps comparison to other people, thinking, hey, look what I got that they don't have. I'm doing pretty well. And maybe it was the Lord humbling me, and so I can be grateful for that as well. But just such a good lesson that we cannot ultimately put any kind of hope in our money, however much of it we have. And you might be someone who's got millions of, net worth. Your money belongs to the Lord, and we got to remember this, folks. This is a sober mindset, humble mindset. God can take it away if He wants. He can take it away if He wants, and that's a scary thought, especially if you're like me and you've got a young family that you're trying to provide for. That is a scary thought. Or maybe you're an older person and you're now living off of the nice retirement that you have, the investments that you've made. God can take it away if He wants. What I'm trying to tell you is not to scare you, but to tell you that every good and perfect gift you have is a gift from God. It is all God's. So you may have done the human work to do it, but it is a gift from God, and He can take it away if He wants. It is His after all. The fact that we get to steward it at all is just another picture of the tremendous grace that we have been shown. So as you're trying to perhaps rebuild that emergency fund after you spend it, for example, just remember that. Remember that it's a gift from God. Every $100 you put away, every couple $100 you put away. Same with your investing. Every amount of dollars that you put into your money market account, for example, thank God over that money and pray over that money too, that God would use it well, and that you would be a good steward of it. And that's really why we're here, folks. We're here to help you be a good steward of the money that you have been entrusted with. It's a tightrope that we walk here, because we tell you to treat your money like it's such an important, valuable thing, that as if it was in your possession, possession, but it's not yours. It's not your money at all. It's God's money. It is God's money. And hopefully, upon realizing that, you can start to understand, you know what? This is all the more reason for me to be a good steward with my money. The fact that it's not mine, but that it's God's, makes it that much more important for me to be a good steward with it. So I'd encourage you in that today, folks. If you want to learn more about any of this stuff, just visit financialissues.org. Check us out. Check out our statement of faith. Check out the partnership. Check out all that stuff. But it was a great time today on the show, and I appreciate you all so much. And God willing, we'll do it again tomorrow for more financial issues. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you next time.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.